So years ago, I think I met a yogi, a spiritual master. And at the time, I had no idea. And I'm going to share that story with you. But I did have a sense of an idea. And I'm pretty fascinated about it. I think you might enjoy it too. Also going to be talking to you about Kriya Yoga today. I'm learning how to do that. I want to share with you why. I'm going to be talking about that through my journey with that, what I'm learning, and how it could be helpful to you. And then some other recent cool things that I've learned that I want to pass on to you, right? So, welcome to this latest, I think it's episode 13 of the 1 Minute Vlog. And really what I'm doing on here is sharing my journey back to oneness. And since we're all one, it's our journey, right? And I have been guided to do this in video format. We'll figure out why later, have some ideas on that, I've shared in other videos. Yet here we are. And here's the secret about oneness. We are already one. And we're just dissolving the illusion that we're not. We are one with God. And that's a fact, yet we feel separation's real. And that's why a lot of the things that happen go on the way they do. So let's get into my first story, right? Now, I'm going to right off the bat ask you, don't judge, right? Because you're gonna be like, really, Gavin? You used to do that, right? We all have a past. And when in 2007, it was our dream to move from Indianapolis to San Diego. We wanted to be in a tropical place, warm weather, kind of, go for it. Everybody thought we were crazy. We had 3 young kids from the age of 3 months to 5 years. And we sold our business, moved across the country. And I needed to find a job like that. I'd always been in sales. My neighbor had been like, hey, timeshare can be good. So I got a job doing timeshare, right? This is where I'm saying, don't judge me, okay? Now, I was able to help families, make sure that they spend time with each other, planning a vacation every year, and I did it the right way and with integrity and did pretty well with it. But this story is about someone who came in one day, and I just want to let you know, I have forgotten about this story really for a long time. I can't remember the last time. And this happened in 2008. This happened 15 years ago, roughly. It happened a few months before I started the 1 Minute the first time, which is fascinating. And also, this is a continuation of the last video, which I recommend going back, that I've been reading Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. I think I said that right. Hopefully, I've been working on it. And I finished that book yesterday. Right at the end, it said he died 1952, March 7th. Yes, today's March 8th. Yesterday was March 7th. How, interesting, fascinating, synchronistic, coincidental that I finished the book the day he died, right? I mean, that's interesting. The odds of that are pretty slim, wouldn't you think? I didn't know that because it's at the very end. And so there's lots of other synchronicities. And what I've learned that I'm sharing, in these videos is that synchronicities are guidance. They're breadcrumbs along the way towards faith, the mustard seed, the belief, the trust, right? These videos are that in action for me. I'm just being called forth for this. Do it, Gavin. It'll make sense later. Here I am, right? So I'm reading this book. And it was about 5 days ago, I just had this, I was like, oh my gosh, they mentioned this word Diksha, okay? And, I have it right here pulled up that, someone was asking for the Diksha, and it's basically just to get into Kriya Yoga, and it's a spiritual initiation. I talk about it another time. I look that up, what it means. Yet, I'm getting back to timeshare. I go and pick up my appointment and take them over to the table that I'm at. And the second this young man sits down, I look in his eyes, okay, and I melt. My heart explodes. I can't, I was thinking about it this morning. I started getting emotional. I might get emotional again. But just his look, the innocence, the absolute love, the like awareness, the gentleness. I mean, I kind of get chills thinking about it. And I was like, whoa, okay. And so I looked at him, I was like, I didn't know what to do. And I could tell he knew something was going on with me, and he looked at me. And keep in mind, he was with his girlfriend, and she just kind of looked at me and started smiling. And I was like, wow, like I feel like I know you. I'm gonna fix this a little bit. Sorry. Like I feel like I know you. And he was like, I get that a lot. And she kind of was like, oh, here we go. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, oh no, it's fine. Like let's begin. Next thing you know, I'm looking at him. I start having tears roll down my eyes. Like I'm start crying. It was like joy. And one of the things in the Autobiography of a Yogi, I've never really kind of understood is like, you know, when they see saints or ascended masters or their guru, a lot of times they'll bow and like kiss their feet. And so and like out of love and out of respect and out of like almost seeing God, like bowing down to like this transcendent like experience and being in physical form. And I didn't want to bow down to his feet because that's, at the time, I didn't even know who Yogananda was. And I remember now, I've kind of started to recall these past things, is that he was like, oh yeah, like, do I look familiar? And I was like, yeah, you look very familiar. He's like, oh, have you ever heard of Yogananda? And I was like, no, I never have. And he was like, a lot of people say I look like him. And when I got to this part in this book, I remembered like all of a sudden something, with the Diksha, I was like, oh my gosh, like that guy looked exactly like Yogananda, like in his younger pictures and like the picture that's on that book, on his book, the Yogi Autobiography. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, like this kind of pointy nose and these eyes that are a little, not bulging, but like just like innocent and loving. And I'm like, in the book, they talk about like astral and projections, and like gurus come, like after they passed away, they come back in physical form. I really, like, looking back, I think that was my introduction to Yogananda. And I actually had my manager there introduce me to Autobiography of Yogi. And I used to always go to Encinitas and like meditate at those gardens. And my manager was really into Yogananda and did Kriya Yoga and was trying to teach me, and it just wasn't resonating at the time. But I feel like we always were going to move to San Diego for a reason, and that was like Encinitas possibly, and like just the energies there. And we don't live there anymore. We live in Florida, but like all these years later, I remember that day, and I'm going to share with you exactly what happened. So I'm crying on this table. I literally am like crying, and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't, I'm like crying, and he's just like, it's fine, Gavin. Like, and she's like, no, don't worry. Like, this happens a lot. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I've never sat down with somebody, just look at them and have my heart open, or like feel this way, like this joy, this love. I was like, I feel like you're glowing. And he was like, it's like, how do you answer that to somebody who doesn't know, right? So he was very humble and like, yeah, like from where I'm from, like a lot of people know who I am. I don't remember his name, and I don't remember like how he described that, but it was kind of like sidestepping that because it wasn't about that. It wasn't about ego. And he was like, well, is there anything you want to talk about? And I was like, if you don't mind, I don't want to talk about timeshares. He's like, that's fine. We're not interested. And it's like, I think this is divine. Like, we're supposed to meet. So we start talking. He starts sharing his story. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And like his story, just kind of like how he came over here and what they were doing and like what he's about. And then, I feel like, I can't say for sure. I feel like he brought up Kriya Yoga. I feel like he brought up practices. And he was sharing like, you can tell like you're seeking, you're searching. And like he said for himself, his whole thing is like oneness with God. And that's kind of like what his whole life is about. And so that immediately, I was fascinated by that. I was like, yeah, me too. I just don't know what that looks like, right? I don't know how to do that. And so I asked him all kinds of questions. Unfortunately, I don't really, remember. But he said, hey, Gavin, like, I can't do it here, but having talked to you, like, I'm from this lineage, and I can initiate you with a Diksha, And I was like, well, what's that? And I just met this guy. It's been about like 45 minutes, and he was like, I don't even really remember what he said. It's been 15 years, right? And this is all like coming back to me and reading this book. So he was like, why don't you come over to my hotel this afternoon? I can't remember. It was probably like 45 minutes to an hour. And he's like, I'm going to give you this initiation. And I'm like, okay, this is weird, right? I just met this person. I'm crying. Now I'm going to go and get some kind of like initiation. But I trusted him implicitly. I like knew like he was pure and loving and good intentions, like undoubtedly. So I was like, I'm in. And so as soon as my last, went over there, and I remember like energetically just feeling like, oh my gosh, now I'm starting to learn about my chakras, but I was open. And like I knew something big happened. I just didn't know what. I didn't know what was happening. And I just, afterwards felt amazing. Felt like there's this huge shift. Coincidentally, I started the Onement within a few months. I feel like there was like this huge like change within me of like this knowing, this awakening, this opening up to like what was true. I feel like in a lot of ways my spiritual practice really opened. And I remember for like a few months just feeling like this bliss and this like trust and knowing. And that's why I started the Onement. So I also said, gosh, like, I want to repay you. Like, would you come over for dinner? And so, he's like, how far away do you live? 45 minutes. And they had a car, and he's like, absolutely, we'd be honored to be your guest. And I'm just like, okay, that's an interesting thing to say. Yet, I called my wife, and I'm like, hey, listen, I don't know how to explain to you. I just got a Diksha. I don't know what it was. I don't know, she's like, you're at somebody's hotel? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, Gavin, what's going on? And I was like, I invited him over to dinner. And she's like, you did what? Like, what? Anyway, he came over to dinner. It was wonderful, connected. Like, I've never talked to him again. And I wish I would have had his number. I wish I had his name. I don't think that was ever the point. I don't even know if he's still in this physical world, right? Yet, I told my wife that. She's like, oh yeah, I totally remember that. And like she remembered even more. I was like, what do you remember? She's like, yeah, dinner was crazy. Like the stuff he was sharing. And like he was tapped in, Gavin. And I was like, that's what I, remember. And I was like, anytime I was around him, like I felt blissful. I felt joyful. Like there's no worries. Like all was well. And she's like, yeah, like I picked up on that too. And I thought it was crazy. She's like, why you bring this up? And I was like, I just read this book. So she was like, wow, and it's just, these are the kind of things I'm learning to pay attention to. There's been two things that have, two gurus, ascended masters, spiritual teachers that have really spoken to me. Really, Yogananda, when I was in San Diego going to meditate on the cliffs in Encinitas all the time, and I'd read his book before, and I had not really dove into it because I was more, into Course in Miracles and still am. And Jesus, those are my two peeps, right? And why I'm telling you this story is, number one, I think it's a fascinating story. But I have called forth in meditations, in prayer, like I want to know God. I want to be connected. Teach me oneness. Remind me and help me remember who I really am. That's like my purpose, and that like I want to be the embodiment of that, the spirit of that, the reflection of that in my words and my actions and my being, because I know that's the truth, right? And that you probably feel the same way if you're watching this video, right? And that's like, I feel like so many on this spiritual journey who like realize it is that are like seeking and searching and looking for answers. And so when I did that, when I asked that question, so many things have come in my way, like books recommended, and like I read that and like learned so many things, and the Kriya Yoga, like Aaron Apke, I've been watching a lot of his videos, and he talks about the law of one, A Course in Miracles, and then Kundalini energy and clearing the chakras. And I'm like, I just intuitively knew, like, I have blockage. Like, I want to open myself up, my heart, and like come from that knowingness and vibrationally, like that frequency. And like, I know that Jesus, constantly prayed and did a lot of meditating and was really connecting with God. And that Kriya Yoga, that's kind of what Yogananda came to do, is to teach the West like meditation and Kriya Yoga, and like teach Eastern philosophies in the West. And he did that, and like that really resonates with me. So I bought his self-realization like course, and they mail it to me, and they give it to me slowly over like, I think it's like 6 to 8 months. And I've been doing what he's been taught so far, meditations. And this came up, this story, this remembrance, just during this book. Like, I had blocked it out. Like, I'd totally forgotten about that. And that was crazy. Like, some guy comes in and I cry when I see him. And then he performs this Diksha initiation. And I didn't even know what at the time it was. But it's pretty cool now, right? Fascinating story. So I have been saying, God, show me ways that I can open up, that I can remember. And this is one of them. And I would encourage you to look into Kriya Yoga. I would encourage you to read Autobiography of Yogi if you haven't. And so many fascinating stories. I love that it's a story, and story after story. I love that Yogananda, when he was younger, was just, had an ego and had resistance, and like kind of like did the work, and like that was the manifestation of like, becoming that pureness and opening himself up to his self-realization, right? And I know that's within one of us. I mean, it's one of us, that's true, Freudian slip. It's within one of us, because there is only one of us, but it's in all of us, is what I was going to say. So, that goes back to that guidance. Are you following the guidance? Are you seeing the things along the way? Are you noticing? Because all of those things are the faith and trust of like remembering, like, hey, you have help. You are being taught to, in the ways that you can receive in this moment with where you're at. And if you follow that guidance and you listen to it and you act on it, you're going to reap the benefits of that. You're going to tap into who you really are and the vibration of that quicker. I, would like to share over the last 3 weeks, I've just showed up in everything I can, as much as just like that I want to be of service, that I want to give. How it's worked up at my job, where I'm still in sales, is like, I'm here to be of service to these people and to give them the best experience from God. And before I go in, I pray and just like, this is you. Like, whatever's supposed to unfold here, I trust. I don't need anything. I want to, be given guidance, to be of service, to help them if it's necessary for a good fit. And if not, it wasn't meant to be. And like that feeling is so different from like the lack or the need for them to say yes. And I can tell you, like, the interesting thing is like the results have been like amazing. Like, just like that, like everything changed. And so I'm not coming from that lack of like, I want a certain thing to happen a certain way. I'm coming from the trust that if it's right for them, and that I'm coming from service, I'm showing up as my truth, and they get to receive in whichever way is their truth, right? I mean, how cool is that? And I'm sensing this is just the beginning. Like, I'm going to be sharing more and more of these stories, giving more and more advice. It might get more and more like interesting, weird, not believable, the whole bit. I know I'm a miracle worker, and that is starting to show up in so many different ways. A Course in Miracles describes miracles as a change in perception. And when we let go of what we think we know, and we give everything over to God, or Course in Miracles would say the Holy Spirit, we're putting that trust and faith into to actual truth. rather than what our ego thinks should happen to make us feel safe from a place of scarcity or smallness. That we're stepping into that bigness and that largeness and that grandeur of truth, of God, of oneness. And then it's unlimited possibility. Then it gets unbelievably miraculous, right? And I've experienced that at different times in my life, and I like just slid back and like, where did I go wrong? And I went back into the fear. And it's like, part of all of this is to help all of us like really take that advancement and not slide back, maybe like this, but constantly going up this way. So only love, my friends. I really appreciate you being here. I hope these stories and the advice and the thoughts is helpful. Would always appreciate like, comment, subscribe if this so speaks with you. If not, no worries, no need for that. Whichever you're attuned to. I also like pretty much gonna start showing videos. I have a video where it's our my first vlog, which kind of explains this if that's the first time you've been here. And then like my most recent one, you can click on it and watch that, the previous one, so you can kind of learn more about the autobiography. And in that video, I talk about like, who's your guru, how to find the guru. And I think you'll find that pretty interesting. So I highly recommend it. So honored to be on this journey with you. Pretty fun story. Just all kinds of like unbelievable things happening. And I'm noticing, feeling, and doing, the work of practices and paying attention, and really looking forward to diving into Kriya Yoga. So look forward to hearing from you. I will see you again soon, my friends. Much, much, much love. Bye-bye.